Asha's rental car protested as she navigated the winding road leading into the Black Hills. The late September air coming through her half-open window carried the scent of pine and approaching autumn. Crisp, clean, nothing like the antiseptic hospital corridors she'd left behind in Minneapolis. Her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. ETA. Jordan's about to organize the trail mix by caloric content. A smile broke across her face. 10 years of friendship, and some things never changed. 20 minutes don't let him alphabetize the granola bars again. The road curved sharply, revealing a vista of rolling hills carpeted in pine and spruce, their deep greens punctuated by splashes of golden aspen. Asha's shoulders loosened, the knot between her shoulder blades. A permanent fixture after 12-hour ER shifts, beginning to unwind. This annual camping trip was their constant. Through career changes, relationships, breakups, like her still raw split with Elise 6 months ago, the four of them always returned to the wilderness, together. 1 week, no responsibilities. Just the friends who knew her before she built her walls so high. The campground appeared ahead, and Asha spotted Mia's distinctive red Jeep beside Derek's sleek black Tesla, a perfect visual representation of their contrasting personalities. As she pulled in, 3 figures rose from a picnic table and moved toward her car. Jordan reached her first, his angular face breaking into a wide grin beneath perpetually wind-blown hair. The doctor finally graces us with her presence. He pulled her into a tight hug, smelling of sunscreen and coffee. Some of us can't just cancel classes whenever we want, Professor, she teased, returning the embrace. Mia approached more quietly, copper braid gleaming in the sunlight. Her freckled face held its usual watchful expression before dissolving into a warm smile. Thought you might bail on us this year, she said, her photographer's eyes cataloging the changes in Asha's appearance. Not a chance. Asha embraced her, noticing Mia felt thinner than last year, more angles than curves against her. Derek completed their circle, lifting Asha off her feet in a bear hug. The gang's finally all here. His booming voice hadn't changed since college, though his once wild afro was now a meticulously maintained shaved head and beard. Put me down, you tech bro monster, Asha laughed, the final threads of tension in her body releasing. This was where she belonged. As they unloaded gear and prepared for the hike to their campsite, Asha observed her friends through the dual lens of affection and her clinician's trained eye. Jordan's movements were more hurried than usual, his normally enthusiastic geology talk peppered with references to department politics and publishing pressures. Mia winced slightly when adjusting her heavy camera bag, touching her right temple when she thought no one was looking. Derek's charismatic energy seemed forced, his smile not quite reaching his eyes when discussing his company's latest project. They were all carrying something hidden, just as she carried the weight of her failed relationship and the 3 patients she'd lost last month. 4 miles to the site, Jordan announced, consulting his topographic map with unnecessary intensity. Should be there well before sunset if we maintain a reasonable pace. Derek groaned dramatically. Already with the scheduling. We've been here 20 minutes. Some things never change, Mia murmured, adjusting her camera around her neck. And thank God for that. Asha added, shouldering her pack. The trail led them deeper into the forest, sunlight filtering through the canopy in shifting patterns. Conversation flowed easily. Updates on jobs, mutual acquaintances, the latest binge-worthy shows, but stayed carefully on the surface. They were relearning each other, rebuilding the connections that real life had frayed. 2 hours into the hike, they crossed a shallow stream where Jordan paused to examine the rock formation along the bank. Mia photographed a hawk circling overhead, while Derek checked his phone one last time before losing signal. Asha walked a few steps ahead, rounding a bend in the trail, when something stopped her cold. A narrow ravine cut through the hillside to her right, unremarkable except for the sudden chill that raised goosebumps on her arms. The air coming from the gap smelled wrong. Not unpleasant, but different. Metallic, ancient. Her pulse quickened inexplicably. "Ash, you okay?" Derek's voice broke her trance. She blinked, the sensation vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "Yeah, just thought I saw something." She forced a smile. "My doom radar going off over nothing." The famous doom radar. Jordan laughed, catching up. "Remember when it saved us from that flash flood in Colorado? Or the time it got us out of that bar 5 minutes before the health inspector shut it down," Mia added. Asha laughed with them, but something lingered. A faint unease she couldn't articulate. Just nerves, she told herself. Too many night shifts messing with her circadian rhythm. Their campsite was perfect. A small clearing surrounded by pines, with a natural stone fire ring and enough flat ground for their tents. As golden hour descended, painting the forest in warm amber light, they fell into their familiar roles. Jordan analyzing the site's geological features, Mia capturing the light through the trees, Derek setting up his recording equipment to capture ambient sounds for his meditation app, and Asha organizing their medical supplies, with perhaps more thoroughness than a simple camping trip required. Around the campfire that night, the superficial conversation of the hike deepened as darkness encircled them. Flames cast dancing shadows across their faces, making them look momentarily like strangers before resolving back into the friends she knew. Departments pushing for more publications. Jordan sighed, poking the fire. Tenure doesn't mean what it used to. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed in the field instead of teaching. "At least you're doing something meaningful," Derek said, staring into the flames. "I spent 6 months developing an app that's basically designed to be addictive, telling myself it's about digital wellness, while engineering it to keep people engaged as long as possible. Your meditation app helped me through my residency," Asha reminded him. "That was before we optimized the engagement metrics," Derek replied, making air quotes, his expression darkening. Mia remained quiet, photographing the fire rather than participating, until Asha gently lowered her camera. "How about you? Any amazing wildlife encounters lately?" she asked. Mia hesitated. "Actually, I've been shooting more landscapes, less tracking animals through rough terrain." She shrugged. "Getting older, I guess." The evasion was so obvious that Asha nearly called her on it. But the protective wall behind Mia's eyes stopped her. Whatever she was hiding, she wasn't ready to share it. Instead, Asha found herself talking about Elise. 6 years together, and she ends it with "I need someone who's actually present." The hurt in her voice surprised her. Apparently, saving lives isn't a good enough reason to miss dinner reservations. Their sympathetic murmurs warmed her more than the fire. For a few hours, they were 22 again. Possibilities endless, connections unbreakable, the future a bright uncertainty, rather than a set of compromises. As they retired to their tents, Asha zipped herself into her sleeping bag. The familiar sounds of the forest creating a soothing backdrop. Wind through pine needles, distant owl calls, the soft breathing of her friends in neighboring tents. She drifted to sleep, thinking of the ravine they'd passed, the strange metallic smell, the momentary chill. Her last conscious thought was dismissing it as meaningless, just her overactive nervous system responding to finally being away from the hospital's constant stimuli. At exactly 3:17 a.m., Asha's eyes snapped open. The forest was completely silent. No insects, no wind, no ambient sounds whatsoever. Just the heavy, waiting silence of something listening. She lay perfectly still, heart hammering against her ribs, waiting for her eyes to adjust to the darkness, or for the natural sounds to resume. Neither happened. After 3 long minutes, the normal forest sounds gradually returned. First a distant owl, then the whisper of wind, finally the chorus of insects. Asha exhaled slowly, telling herself it was just a normal acoustic phenomenon. Or perhaps her sleep-deprived brain playing tricks. But as she drifted back to sleep, the clinical part of her mind noted that her pulse had elevated before she consciously registered the silence, not after. Her body had recognized danger before her mind could name it. Morning light filtered through Asha's tent, the canvas glowing amber. She blinked away fragments of unsettling dreams, running through forests where the trees kept rearranging themselves, searching for something she couldn't name. Outside, she found Jordan already boiling water on the camp stove, his topographic map spread across a flat rock. "Sleep okay?" he asked, handing her a steaming mug. Asha hesitated. "Fine. Except, did you notice anything strange around 3 in the morning?" Jordan's eyebrows rose. "Like what?" Complete silence. No ambient noise at all. "Didn't notice." He shrugged. "But I could sleep through the apocalypse." Asha nodded, sipping her coffee. Probably nothing. Just her brain's hypervigilance failing to turn off. Mia emerged from her tent next, camera already in hand, capturing the morning light filtering through the trees. The silver streak in Asha's hair apparently fascinated her as she circled for the perfect angle. "Stop documenting my stress responses," Asha protested, though she secretly enjoyed Mia's attention. "It's gorgeous," Mia countered. "Like your brain was working so hard it burned a mark through your hair." Derek stumbled out last, eyes still half closed. Someone better have made coffee strong enough to raise the dead. After breakfast, Jordan spread his map wider. "I want to check out this ridgeline," he said, tracing a finger along an elevation line. "There's an unusual formation that shouldn't be there according to the Geological Survey." Translation: Jordan found weird rocks. Derek yawned. "They're not just rocks," Jordan began, launching into an explanation about sedimentary anomalies that Asha only half followed. They set out after securing the campsite, Jordan leading with childlike enthusiasm. The day warmed as they hiked, sunlight dappling the forest floor through swaying branches. Under different circumstances, Asha would have found it perfectly peaceful. But something felt off. She couldn't pinpoint what triggered her unease. The forest looked normal. Towering pines, granite outcroppings, occasional clearings carpeted with late wildflowers. Yet her nervous system remained on high alert, skin prickling with the same sensation she got before a major trauma rolled into the ER. 2 hours into their hike, Jordan stopped abruptly, consulting his map with a frown. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "The formation should be right here, but it's a perfectly ordinary hillside?" Derek supplied. "The survey clearly shows." Jordan stopped, eyes focusing on something beyond them. "Wait, what's that?" Asha followed his gaze to a narrow ravine cutting between two hills, identical to the one that had triggered her unease yesterday. "Was that on your map?" she asked, stomach tightening. "No." Jordan's voice held confusion and excitement in equal measure. "It's not documented at all." The ravine beckoned darkly, a slash of shadow against the sunlit forest. As they approached, Asha noted the temperature dropping several degrees. That metallic smell returned, stronger now, like old pennies and stone dust. "There's some kind of clearing ahead," Mia said, already photographing the unusual rock formations lining the ravine walls. Jordan led them through the narrow passage, his usual scientific commentary oddly absent. The walls rose around them, striated with bands of dark and light stone that Asha couldn't identify. They didn't look natural, too regular, too precise. The ravine opened suddenly into a perfect circular clearing, roughly 30 feet across. 7 standing stones formed an equally perfect circle in its center. Asha stopped at the edge, reluctant to enter without understanding why. "This is incredible," Jordan breathed, approaching the stones. "These aren't natural formations. They're deliberately placed." The standing stones rose about 6 feet tall, rough-hewn, yet somehow precise in their positioning. They weren't the worked megalithic structures of European stone circles, but seemed older, more primal, as if they'd grown from the earth rather than being quarried and moved. Derek pulled out his recording equipment. "Perfect acoustic space," he murmured, setting up mics at different points. Mia circled the perimeter, camera clicking rapidly. "The light here is strange. Look how it falls on the stones." She was right. Despite the clearing being open to the sky, the sunlight seemed to bend around the stones, creating shadows that fell at impossible angles. Asha remained at the edge, medical mind cataloging her physiological responses: elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, hypervigilance, classic fight or flight symptoms with no obvious trigger. "How old do you think these are?" she asked, trying to ground herself in factual information. Jordan ran his hand over one stone, his expression puzzled. "I'm not sure. They don't match any known Native American structures in the region. The weathering pattern suggests significant age, but..." He frowned. "The mineral composition is odd. I can't place it. Can we go?" The words escaped before Asha could stop them. 3 pairs of eyes turned to her in surprise. "We just got here," Derek said. I know, Asha struggled to articulate the nameless dread crawling up her spine. Something doesn't feel right. Jordan's expression softened. The Doom radar? She nodded, embarrassed. There was nothing objectively threatening about ancient stones in a forest clearing. Yet every instinct honed through years of emergency medicine screamed danger. Let me get a few more recordings, Derek said, adjusting his equipment. The acoustic properties here are fascinating. Listen. He played back a segment he'd just recorded. Beyond the expected forest sounds was a low-frequency hum, just at the threshold of hearing, a vibration more felt than heard. What is that? Mia asked, drawing closer. Not sure, Derek replied, fiddling with filters on his app. It's below normal human hearing range. Some kind of resonance from the rocks, maybe. Jordan's scientific curiosity was fully engaged now. These stones might be positioned to capture and amplify natural frequencies in the environment. Some ancient cultures used acoustic properties in their sacred sites. Asha forced herself to approach the nearest stone, determined to find a rational explanation for her unease. The surface felt oddly warm beneath her fingers, almost vibrating with subtle energy. The metallic smell was strongest here, mingling with an earthy petrichor. There's no writing or carving on them, she observed, examining the smooth surface. Not that we can see, Jordan corrected. Weathering could have erased surface markings. They spent another hour in the clearing, each engaged in their own investigation. Jordan measuring and documenting, Mia photographing from every angle, Derek recording the strange acoustics. Asha found herself watching the sky, noting how the shadows barely moved despite the sun's passage. Time felt wrong here, stretched and compressed simultaneously. When they finally left, Asha's relief was palpable. Back on the main trail, the forest felt normal again. Birds calling, insects buzzing, leaves rustling in the breeze. Her vital signs stabilized, Doom radar quieting to background static. That evening around the campfire, their conversation revolved entirely around the stone circle. Jordan sketched the formation in his notebook, calculating angles and alignments, with stars visible through breaks in the canopy. Derek analyzed his recordings, isolating the strange hum and comparing it to known geological frequencies. What did you think, Ash? Mia asked, reviewing the day's photographs on her camera's display. Honestly, it felt wrong. Asha poked the fire, sending sparks spiraling upward. Medically speaking, my autonomic nervous system went haywire for no apparent reason. Intuition isn't always rational, Mia said quietly. Sometimes your body knows things before your mind does. The conversation shifted to theories about the stone's origin, Jordan favoring a previously undocumented indigenous astronomical site, Derek suggesting natural formation with unusual acoustic properties, Mia wondering if early settlers had created it for some forgotten purpose. Asha contributed little, watching her friends instead. Their usual dynamics had subtly shifted. Jordan's explanations lacked his typical digressions and tangents, following a single-minded focus on the stones. Derek, normally quick to joke, remained intensely concentrated on his recordings. Mia kept returning to the same photographs, frowning slightly at the images on her display. When they finally retired to their tents, Asha lay awake, listening to the normal forest sounds with heightened awareness. She closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing, using the meditation techniques Derek's original app had taught her. Her consciousness was just beginning to drift when the forest went silent. Her eyes snapped open. The luminous dial of her watch read exactly 3:17 a.m. Complete silence enveloped the campsite. The same unnatural absence of sound she'd experienced the previous night. But this time, she wasn't alone in noticing it. "What the hell?" Derek's voice came from outside. Asha unzipped her tent to find all three friends standing in the clearing, expressions mirroring her own confusion and alarm. "It just stopped," Jordan whispered, his voice sounding too loud in the silence. "All of you heard it too?" Asha asked, heart hammering. They nodded, faces ghostly in the moonlight. "My equipment," Derek said, already moving toward his tent. He emerged with his recording setup, powering it on. The display showed sound waves. The device was registering audio, despite the apparent silence. Derek played it back through headphones, his expression growing more troubled as he listened. "It's that same hum from the stone circle," he said, passing the headphones to Jordan. "But stronger." One by one, they listened. The recording contained a low-frequency vibration that seemed to modulate in complex patterns, almost like speech slowed down beyond recognition. "This isn't normal," Asha said, clinical mind racing through possible explanations. Atmospheric conditions, geological shifts, even group hallucination, and finding all of them inadequate. "Maybe it's coming from the stones," Mia suggested, her voice unnaturally steady. "Some kind of resonance triggered at night." "That doesn't explain why we all woke at exactly the same time," Asha countered. As suddenly as it had disappeared, sound returned to the forest. A gradual resumption of insect calls, wind through branches, the distant hooting of an owl. They stood in the moonlight, exchanging uncertain glances as the world reset to normal around them. "We should document this," Jordan said finally. "Set up Derek's equipment to record continuously. And maybe take shifts watching," Mia added. They agreed, though no one articulated exactly what they were watching for. Back in her sleeping bag, Asha stared at the tent ceiling, sleep impossible now. The image of the stone circle remained vivid behind her eyelids when she blinked. In her mind, the stones weren't empty monoliths, but sentinels standing watch over the clearing. Listening, waiting, measuring. A clinical detachment she'd cultivated through years of emergency medicine told her this was just her brain's pattern recognition systems misfiring, assigning agency to inanimate objects. But deeper, more primitive brain structures whispered a different truth. Something in these hills was waking up, and it had noticed them. Asha woke to the sound of Mia's voice, pitched higher than normal. "Guys! You need to see this." Outside her tent, morning sunlight illuminated a scene that appeared normal at first glance. Campfire ashes, cooking gear, their backpacks secured against curious wildlife. But Mia stood rigidly beside a pine tree, camera gripped too tightly in her hands. "What's wrong?" Asha asked, registering Jordan and Derek, emerging from their tents. The photographs from yesterday. Mia turned her camera display toward them. They're different. Asha looked at the screen, showing an image of the stone circle they'd discovered. It took her a moment to identify what was wrong. The shadows. They fell at impossible angles, creating patterns across the ground that resembled symbols or letters in an unknown language. That's not how shadows work, Jordan said, squinting at the display. It gets worse. Mia cycled through more images. In several, blurred figures occupied the edges of the frame. Vague humanoid shapes that hadn't been visible when she took the shots. Could be lens flare or digital artifacts, Derek suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. Mia shook her head. I've been shooting professionally for 8 years. I know the difference between technical glitches and... She gestured helplessly at the display. Something cold settled in Asha's stomach. Let's review the audio recordings too. Derek retrieved his equipment, brow furrowed as he examined the readings. It recorded continuously after the silence event. The hum persisted for exactly 17 minutes, then stopped. But there's something else now. He filtered the audio and played it back. Beneath the hum was something new. Whispering voices, speaking words just beyond comprehension, like a conversation in another room. Could be radio interference, Derek said unconvincingly. Out here, Jordan challenged. There's no signal for miles. Asha's medical training demanded empirical evidence, measurable data. Let's be methodical. What exactly have we observed that's objectively unusual? Jordan counted on his fingers. 1. A stone circle not documented in any geological survey. 2. Synchronized waking at precisely 3:17 a.m., accompanied by complete environmental silence. 3. Photographic anomalies. 4. Unexplained audio phenomena. We should go back to the stones, Mia said, already packing her camera bag. Document any changes in daylight. A protest rose in Asha's throat, but died unspoken. What alternative could she offer? Flee based on intuition and strange photographs. They ate a quick breakfast and set out, following yesterday's path. Within 20 minutes, Asha's unease crystallized into concrete observation. The landscape had changed. This isn't right, she said, stopping abruptly. That ridge was steeper yesterday. Jordan consulted his map, frowning. And this stream crossing. We didn't ford any water on the way to the circle. Maybe we're taking a different route, Derek suggested. No, Mia said quietly. The trail markers I mentally noted are all wrong. That distinctive dead tree should be on our left, not right. They continued more cautiously, each noting further discrepancies. Rock formations in different positions. Distances between landmarks contracted or expanded. The forest itself somehow denser than the previous day. More disturbing was the absence of wildlife. No birdsong punctuated the air. No squirrels darted between trees. Not even insects buzzed around them. The forest felt abandoned, or perhaps waiting. They found the ravine entrance without difficulty, though Asha was certain it appeared in a different location than yesterday. The temperature dropped as they entered the narrow passage, that same metallic smell intensifying. The circular clearing opened before them, the 7 standing stones exactly as they'd left them. Or almost exactly. They've moved, Jordan whispered, immediately pulling out his notebook where he'd sketched their positions. The entire circle has rotated approximately 7 degrees clockwise. That's not possible, Derek said, but his voice held more fascination than denial. Asha remained at the clearing's edge, monitoring her physiological responses. Heart rate elevated, but stable. Breathing shallow but controlled. The sense of wrongness remained, but now accompanied by something new. A subtle pull toward the circle's center, like gravity slightly stronger there than elsewhere. Mia moved slowly around the perimeter, photographing from the same positions as yesterday for comparison. The light is still wrong in here, she noted. The shadows don't match the sun's position. Jordan approached the nearest stone, running his hands over the surface. There's something here that wasn't visible yesterday. They gathered around, examining what appeared to be faint carvings emerging from the stone. Crude symbols showing humanoid figures surrounding a larger, amorphous shape. Weathering wouldn't reveal carvings overnight, Jordan said, tracing the marks. These were deliberately hidden somehow. Or they weren't here before, Asha suggested quietly. Derek set up his equipment, focusing on the stone with the carvings. The hum is stronger today, he reported, examining his readings. And it's modulating in patterns that don't appear random. Like a language, Mia suggested. Or a heartbeat, Asha countered. The medical comparison springing to mind unbidden. They spent another hour documenting the changes, Jordan measuring the stone's new positions, while Derek recorded audio from different points in the circle. Mia photographed the carvings from multiple angles, and Asha, reluctantly entering the circle, examined the ground for any physical evidence of the stones being moved. She found nothing, no drag marks, no disturbed soil. It was as if the earth itself had rotated the massive stones. When Jordan called them together to share his findings, Asha noticed something odd about her friend's movements. They responded to his voice in perfect synchronization, heads turning at identical angles, bodies pivoting with mirrored precision. When Derek reached into his pocket for a protein bar, Mia mirrored the gesture exactly, though her hand came up empty. The stones are aligned astronomically, Jordan was explaining, his voice taking on a lecturer's cadence. They track specific celestial movements, but only from this exact latitude and longitude, and tonight is significant. The autumn equinox, Mia said, camera hanging forgotten at her side. Jordan nodded. Exactly. When the alignment will be perfect. Perfect for what? Asha asked, the question emerging sharper than intended. Her friends turned to her with identical expressions, a momentary blankness before their features reset to normal. Unknown, Jordan admitted, but cultures worldwide recognized equinoxes as powerful transitional moments. Boundaries between worlds were considered thinner. You don't actually believe that, Asha said, searching his face for the rational scientist she knew. I'm just contextualizing the archaeological significance, he replied, but something in his tone had changed, a newfound reverence replacing scientific detachment. As they prepared to return to camp, Mia's camera batteries died simultaneously with a high-pitched whine. Derek's recording equipment followed seconds later. Though he'd replaced the batteries that morning, technology often malfunctions in areas of high electromagnetic activity. Jordan explained, his tone still unnaturally measured. Perfectly natural phenomenon. But nothing felt natural as they hiked back. The forest had transformed further, trees growing denser, the underbrush forming patterns too regular to be random. Even the air felt different, heavier with moisture that carried that pervasive metallic tang. At camp, Asha organized their supplies with mechanical precision, using the familiar task to ground herself. The clinical part of her mind cataloged observations, spatial disorientation, visual anomalies, group behavioral changes. Another part whispered diagnoses: folie à deux, mass psychogenic illness, shared hallucination. None fit perfectly. All required ignoring evidence. As evening approached, Asha noticed her friends moving with increasing synchronization, reaching for items simultaneously, finishing each other's sentences with uncanny precision, their speech patterns converging into a shared cadence. During dinner preparation, Derek sliced tomatoes while discussing his app development. The engagement metrics are designed to... He stopped abruptly, knife hovering. His eyes unfocused, staring into middle distance. Derek? Asha touched his shoulder. No response. He remained perfectly still, not even blinking. Jordan and Mia continued their conversation as if nothing were wrong, neither noticing Derek's state. Something's happening with Derek, Asha interrupted, her voice sharp with alarm. They turned, expressions blank for 3 heartbeats before recognition flickered back. Derek? Jordan approached, waving a hand before his friend's unblinking eyes. No response. Asha checked his vitals, pulse steady but slow, pupils responsive but dilated. No sign of stroke or seizure, yet his consciousness seemed entirely absent. After 2 terrifying minutes, Derek blinked rapidly and continued his sentence as if there had been no interruption. Create a dopamine response loop that keeps users returning. Derek, you just checked out for 2 minutes, Asha said, still gripping his wrist, where she'd been monitoring his pulse. He frowned. What? No, I was just talking about... You stopped mid-sentence and went catatonic, she insisted, completely unresponsive. Confusion clouded his features. I don't remember that. Did you experience anything during those minutes? Asha asked, shifting into clinical assessment mode. Yeah, any sensations, thoughts, images. Derek's expression shifted from confusion to something more troubled. I was dreaming, I think, about the stones. There were voices coming from them, calling me, saying they've been waiting. A heavy silence fell over the camp. The fire popped and hissed, sending sparks spiraling into darkening sky. We should leave, Asha said finally, first thing tomorrow morning. Something isn't right here. To her surprise, her friends nodded in agreement. Whatever's happening, we're not equipped to handle it, Jordan acknowledged, scientific curiosity finally giving way to caution. I've got enough footage anyway, Mia added, though she hadn't taken her camera out since returning to camp. They retired early, exhaustion washing over them, despite the relatively easy day. Asha lay in her sleeping bag, listening intently to the forest sounds, half expecting them to cut out at any moment. Instead, A different disturbance woke her hours later. The sound of movement outside her tent. The luminous dial of her watch read 3:08 a.m., 9 minutes before the silence had fallen the previous nights. Unzipping her tent silently, Asha peered out. A figure stood at the edge of their campsite, silhouetted against the starlit sky. Derek. He stared into the darkness, body unnaturally still, face turned toward the direction of the stone circle. As Asha watched, he took a single step forward, movements mechanical and jerky. "Derek?" she called softly, emerging from her tent. He didn't respond or turn. Asha approached cautiously, medical training cataloging symptoms: somnambulism, dissociative state, seizure activity. She circled to face him and faltered. Derek's eyes were open but unseeing, a milky film covering them. His lips moved silently, forming words she couldn't understand. When she gripped his shoulders, his skin felt cold despite the mild night. "Derek, wake up," she said more forcefully, giving him a gentle shake. Nothing. She tried again, harder. "Derek!" He gasped suddenly, eyes clearing as he blinked rapidly. "What?" "Asha." "What's happening?" "You were sleepwalking," she said, keeping her voice calm despite her racing pulse. "Standing right at the edge of camp." "I wasn't asleep," he insisted, confusion evident. "I was listening." "To what?" His expression grew distant. "The voices from the stones. They're calling us, saying it's almost time." A chill that had nothing to do with the night air ran through Asha. Time for what? Derek's gaze focused on her with sudden clarity. For us to join them. Dawn arrived with unnatural swiftness, as if the night had been abbreviated. Asha hadn't returned to sleep after finding Derek at the camp's edge, instead keeping silent vigil until first light crept between the trees. Her friends gathered around the morning fire, the incident with Derek creating a palpable tension. No one mentioned leaving anymore. "We need to go back to the stone circle," Jordan announced, his tone brooking no argument. "Today's the equinox. If there's any pattern to these phenomena, it will be most evident today." "After what happened with Derek," Asha challenged, searching their faces for rational concern. "Something is affecting us, affecting our minds." "All the more reason to understand it," Mia countered, camera already in hand, though her movements seemed slightly off. Too fluid in some moments, too jerky in others. Derek nodded, his expression eerily similar to Mia's. "The recordings need to be completed, the pattern documented." They spoke like researchers, but their eyes held something else, a hungry fascination that overrode caution. Outnumbered, Asha reluctantly agreed to return to the circle. Her medical training demanded she stay close to monitor their deteriorating mental states, even as her instincts screamed to run. The forest had transformed again overnight. The trail they'd followed yesterday had narrowed, trees pressing closer, branches reaching like fingers above their heads. The quality of light changed too, filtered through leaves that seemed too dense, casting a greenish pall over everything. "Is it just me?" Asha asked carefully. "Or is the circle closer to our camp today?" Jordan consulted his map, frowning. "The distance does seem shorter, but that's impossible." like stones moving overnight is impossible, Asha countered. No one responded. They reached the ravine entrance in half the time it had taken yesterday. The metallic smell had intensified, accompanied now by an electric quality that made the hair on Asha's arms stand on end. The circular clearing appeared different in subtle, disturbing ways. The ground within the circle had darkened, as if scorched by invisible fire. The stones themselves seemed taller, their surfaces less weathered, markings more distinct. The carvings, Jordan breathed, approaching the nearest stone. They're clearer today. The crude symbols had indeed sharpened. Humanoid figures surrounding a larger, amorphous shape, now clearly depicted as merging with it. Additional markings formed concentric rings around the central image, resembling astronomical charts. It's a record, Jordan said, his fingers tracing the symbols with reverence, of a transformation, a joining. Joining with what? Asha asked, remaining at the clearing's edge. Jordan didn't answer, his attention completely absorbed by the carvings. Mia circled the stones, photographing methodically, despite her camera's erratic behavior. Batteries draining and recharging inexplicably, display flickering between normal images and distorted ones. The alignment is changing, she noted. The stones are positioning themselves. For what? Asha pressed. For tonight, Derek answered, setting up his recording equipment in the circle's center. The equinox, when the boundary is thinnest. What boundary? Asha demanded, frustration mounting at their cryptic responses. All three turned to her simultaneously, their movements synchronized with disturbing precision. For a moment, their expressions were identical, a blank, waiting look that transformed their familiar faces into masks. Between us and them, they said in perfect unison. A chill ran down Asha's spine. They hadn't rehearsed that response, hadn't coordinated it, yet they'd spoken as one person. The moment passed, her friends returning to their tasks as if nothing unusual had occurred. But something fundamental had shifted. Asha felt it in the air, a thinning, as if reality itself was being stretched to transparency. Derek sat cross-legged in the circle's center, eyes closed, headphones on, recording equipment before him. His face held an expression of intense concentration that gradually softened into something like rapture. I can hear them clearly now, he murmured. Voices, hundreds of them, thousands, all speaking together. What are they saying? Jordan asked, abandoning the carvings to join him. Derek's eyes remained closed. They've been waiting so long, trapped between states, needing vessels. Vessels for what? Asha asked. Medical mind cataloging symptoms. Shared delusion. Folia 2 expanded to 3, possibly triggered by environmental factors. Sound frequencies below normal hearing range could affect brain function. Toxic spores could cause hallucinations. But none of these explanations accounted for the physical changes to their surroundings. For consciousness, Mia answered, lowering her camera. They discovered how to transcend physical form, but the transformation was incomplete. They exist in a half state now, neither fully conscious nor truly dead. The precision of this information disturbed Asha more than its content. How could you possibly know that? Mia blinked slowly, as if emerging from a trance. I don't know. The knowledge was just there. Jordan's attention had returned to the carvings, his fingers tracing the symbols with growing excitement. The astronomical alignment is the key. These stones were positioned to capture specific celestial energies that only converge during equinoxes. And they've been doing this for how long? Asha asked, trying to engage their rational minds. Thousands of years, Derek answered, eyes still closed. They were here before. The original people of this land. They found a way to merge with it, to become part of it. But something went wrong. They need us, Mia added, her voice taking on the same cadence as Derek's. To complete the pattern. Alarm bells rang through Asha's mind. This wasn't scientific curiosity anymore. This was dangerous obsession. We need to leave, she said firmly. Now. All of us. Her friends looked at her with identical expressions of patient indulgence, as if she were a child failing to grasp a simple concept. We can't leave, Jordan said gently. Not when we're so close to understanding. Understanding what? Asha demanded. How to join them, Derek answered, eyes finally opening. The milky film had returned, clouding his dark irises. How to transcend? Mia nodded, her photographer's gaze now distant and unfocused. They've shown me visions of what comes after. It's beautiful, Asha. Existence without limitation. Listen to yourselves, Asha pleaded. This isn't you talking. Something is influencing your thoughts. Not influencing, Jordan corrected. Expanding. We're being shown the truth. As they spoke, the stones began to resonate visibly, a subtle vibration that disturbed the air around them. The hum Derek had recorded was now audible without equipment, a low, persistent tone that seemed to bypass the ears and resonate directly in the bones. Asha took a step back, the clinical part of her mind still functioning despite mounting panic. Mass hysteria combined with auditory hallucinations. Possibly infrasound causing resonance in the cranial cavity, creating altered states of consciousness. But another part of her, the part that had always sensed dangers before conscious recognition, understood this was something far worse. We're leaving, she insisted, reaching for Mia's arm to pull her away from the stones. The moment her fingers touched Mia's skin, a jolt of electricity shot through her hand, up her arm, and exploded behind her eyes in a kaleidoscope of images. The stones, newly erected, surrounded by figures in ancient garb. A ritual during equinox. Bodies convulsing as consciousness transferred from flesh to stone. Centuries passing in moments, the land changing while the stones remained. Vessels coming to the circle, being filled with ancient minds. Walking away in bodies not their own. Asha stumbled backward, the connection broken. Mia stared at her with knowing eyes. You saw, she said softly. You understand now. I understand we need to leave, Asha insisted, fighting the vertigo the vision had triggered. She turned to Derek, whose recording equipment emitted an ear-splitting screech before dying completely. The batteries had melted, filling the air with the acrid smell of burning plastic. Power's building, he said, seemingly unconcerned about his destroyed equipment. They're gathering strength for tonight. Jordan had completed a full circuit of the stones, his scientific detachment completely abandoned. The alignment begins at sunset, he announced, when the stars visible from this exact longitude and latitude form the same pattern depicted in these carvings. We need to prepare, Mia said, her camera forgotten as she began clearing the ground in the circle's center. Prepare for what? Asha demanded. The joining. They answered in unison, again without coordination or rehearsal. Asha backed away, watching her friends move with increasing synchronization, their individual mannerisms blending into a shared pattern of movement. Whatever was happening, it was accelerating. I'm getting help, she announced, turning toward the ravine entrance. She managed 3 steps before an invisible barrier stopped her. Not a physical wall, but a pressure that made forward movement impossible, as if the air itself had solidified. Jordan noticed her struggle. We can't leave now, he said gently. None of us can. We're part of the pattern. We've been part of it since we found the circle, Derek added. No, Asha said firmly. I'm not part of anything. And neither are you. This is some kind of shared delusion. Is it? Mia approached, holding out her camera. Look. The display showed an image taken moments ago. The 3 of them standing among the stones. But where Asha should have been, at the clearing's edge, was only empty space, as if she weren't really there. That's been digitally altered, Asha insisted. Though she knew Mia lacked both the skills and equipment to fake such an image in real time, they only show themselves to those who are ready to see. Jordan explained, his tone professorial despite the impossible content. Ready to join. I don't want to join anything, Asha said, backing away until she hit the invisible barrier again. Her friends watched her with identical expressions of patient anticipation. The stones hummed louder, the sound vibrating through her chest cavity, disrupting her heartbeat. The sky above the clearing had taken on an unnatural tint. Not quite darkness, but a deeper blue than should be possible in midday. You can't fight it, Derek said softly. None of us can. We were selected because we match the pattern they need. What pattern? Asha asked, desperate to understand, to find some rational explanation. Jordan's mind, structured, pattern-seeking, connected to the earth through his scientific understanding, Mia explained. My vision, the ability to see what others miss, to capture moments between moments. Derek's technical skills, the capacity to translate between systems, to build bridges between different types of information. And me? Asha asked, though she dreaded the answer. Your medical knowledge, Derek replied. Understanding of the human body, how it works, how it can be modified. The implications sent ice through Asha's veins. Not random tourists, then. Specifically chosen targets. No one selected us, she insisted. We chose this camping spot randomly. Jordan smiled indulgently. Did we? Think back. Who suggested the Black Hills this year? This specific trail? Asha tried to remember their planning conversations months ago. The realization hit her like a physical blow. You did, she whispered. And did it feel like my idea? Jordan pressed. Or was I simply the conduit for a suggestion that seemed to appear in my mind fully formed? The ground beneath them trembled slightly, the vibration synchronized with the stones humming. Above, the sky continued to darken prematurely, stars becoming visible despite the sun's presence. "The alignment is beginning," Mia said, her voice reverent. "Earlier than expected. They're eager after waiting so long." As if responding to her words, a thin mist began rising from the ground within the circle. Not natural fog, but something that moved with purpose, tendrils reaching upward like searching fingers. "What is that?" Asha demanded, her clinical detachment finally shattering into naked fear. "Them," Derek answered simply. "The original people. The ones who transcended." The mist thickened, forming vague humanoid shapes, transparent shifting entities that seemed composed of the landscape itself, forest and stone, and sky combined into fluid, barely coherent forms. Asha's rational mind made a final, desperate attempt to explain. Airborne hallucinogens, light refraction, group suggestion. But as the misty figures moved toward her friends, and her friends stepped eagerly forward to meet them, she knew with bone-deep certainty that what they faced was real. And it was hungry. The mist beings retreated as suddenly as they had appeared, dissolving back into the ground, as if responding to some inaudible command. The humming from the stones quieted to a barely perceptible vibration. Above, the sky gradually returned to normal daylight, the prematurely visible stars fading. "Just a preview," Jordan said, disappointment evident in his voice. "The full manifestation comes at sunset." Asha's heart still hammered against her ribs, adrenaline coursing through her system. Fight or flight. But where could she run when escape seemed impossible? "We need to prepare," Mia said, her photographer's precision now directed toward clearing a space in the circle's center. "The vessels must be ready." "Vessels," Asha repeated, the clinical part of her mind still functioning despite her fear. "You mean us? Our bodies?" Derek nodded, that unsettling milky film still clouding his eyes. "They need physical form to complete their transformation. We're perfect matches for their specific patterns." "This is insane," Asha said, though the word felt inadequate for what was happening. "You're talking about letting something take over your bodies." "Not take over," Jordan corrected. "Join with. A symbiosis." "Like what's already happening to you?" Asha challenged. "The synchronized movements? The shared thoughts? The way you're speaking in unison without even realizing it?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jordan's face, the first crack in his complete acceptance. "That's just preliminary attunement. The real joining happens tonight." Asha seized on that momentary doubt. "Jordan, you're a scientist. This violates everything you understand about reality. Doesn't that bother you?" "Science is about expanding understanding," he replied, but his voice held less conviction. "When faced with new evidence, we adjust our theories." "This isn't evidence," Asha insisted. "It's an attack. Something is influencing our minds, altering our perceptions." For a brief moment, Jordan's expression cleared, the passionate scientist visible beneath the strange compliance. "You might be right. We should document this methodically, establish controls. No time. Derek interrupted, his voice altered, deeper, resonant, layered with subtle echoes. The alignment approaches. We must prepare. Jordan's moment of clarity vanished, his expression glazing over again. Yes, prepare. Asha watched in mounting horror as her friends began arranging themselves and their possessions in specific patterns within the circle. Their movements grew increasingly synchronized, 3 bodies moving as aspects of a single entity. She needed to break this influence to reach the real people beneath the compliance. Mia, she called, focusing on her friend's most personal vulnerability. What about your eyes? Your glaucoma. Mia froze, camera halfway to the ground. Yes, I know. Asha continued. I'm a doctor. I noticed the symptoms you've been hiding. The peripheral vision checks, the eye drops, the way you've been shooting landscapes instead of tracking wildlife through rough terrain. Mia turned slowly, her own personality visibly fighting through the influence. What do you think these entities will do to your condition? Asha pressed. What happens to your body after they join with it? They'll fix it, Mia whispered. But uncertainty clouded her features. They promised in the visions. And you believe that? These things that have been manipulating us since we arrived? Mia's hand went to her temple, the unconscious gesture Asha had noticed earlier when her friend was in pain. I need my vision, she said softly. It's everything I am. And Derek, Asha turned to him. Your ethical concerns about technology. You think entities that control minds will share those worries? Derek's glazed expression flickered. They understand patterns, systems, like I do. They understand manipulation, Asha countered. They've been manipulating us from the start. The clearing darkened suddenly, though no clouds blocked the sun. The stones began to hum again, louder, the sound sharp-edged and discordant, as if expressing displeasure. Stop, Jordan said, his voice strained. You're disrupting the alignment. Good, Asha shot back. Whatever's happening here, it's not consensual. These things are overriding your free will. The pressure against Asha's mind intensified. Not words, but emotions and concepts flooding her consciousness. Ancient hunger, endless waiting, the desperate need for physical form, promises of transcendence, of existence beyond mortal limitations. The assault was overwhelming. Asha staggered, blood trickling from her nose as capillaries ruptured under the mental pressure. Her medical training identified the symptoms clinically: increased intracranial pressure, microscopic hemorrhaging. Even as the rest of her mind fought against the invasion. Get out of my head, she gasped, dropping to one knee. Her friends watched with expressions caught between concern and that eerie patient anticipation. The entities were testing her resistance, probing for weaknesses. They found none. Asha had built her defenses through years of emergency medicine. The ability to remain present and functional during crisis, to compartmentalize horror and keep working. Her mind was a fortress constructed through countless traumas, deaths, and impossible choices. The pressure receded, leaving her gasping but intact. You're fighting the inevitable, Derek said, his voice that unsettling multi-tone resonance again. They've waited thousands of years. A few more hours changes nothing. Asha wiped blood from her nose, rising shakily to her feet. If it's inevitable, why are they trying so hard to convince us? To manipulate us? Sounds like they need our cooperation. Jordan's scientific mind engaged briefly. The connection must be accepted to some degree. He acknowledged, force creates resistance that damages the vessel. So we do have a choice, Asha pressed. The choice was made when you entered the clearing, Mia said, her voice distant. When you aligned with the pattern without knowing it. The ground trembled beneath them, a brief but powerful vibration that originated from the stones themselves. The hum modulated into complex patterns that felt almost like language. They're growing impatient, Derek said, turning toward the circle's center. We need to complete the preparations. As her friends resumed their work, Asha realized direct confrontation wouldn't break their compliance. She needed to escape, to find help. Though what kind of help would believe her story, she couldn't imagine. She backed toward the ravine entrance, testing the invisible barrier that had stopped her before. It remained, a wall of pressure that intensified as she pushed against it. The barrier wasn't physical, but perceptual, a manipulation of her sense of space and movement. If she could disrupt her own sensory processing, perhaps she could break through. Pain could do that. Pain cleared the mind, reset perceptions. Asha dug her fingernails into her palm, creating sharp, focused pain. The barrier wavered slightly. She pressed harder, drawing blood, concentrating on the sensation. The pressure thinned. One step backward, another. She was almost at the ravine entrance. She's leaving, Jordan called, alarm breaking through his compliance. The pressure slammed back, stronger than before. Asha gasped as invisible force pushed her forward, back toward the circle. You can't leave, Derek said, approaching with unnatural fluidity. None of us can. Not until it's complete. We won't hurt you, Mia added, her expression gentle despite the wrongness in her eyes. They don't want damaged vessels. They just want to hollow us out and wear us like suits, Asha snapped, still fighting against the pressure. Not hollow, Jordan corrected. Enhance. They'll join with what's already there. Our knowledge, our abilities, combined with their consciousness. And what happens to us? To who we really are. Her friends exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. We'll still be here, Derek said finally. Just expanded. Part of something greater. You don't know that, Asha insisted. You're repeating what they've shown you, what they want you to believe. The pressure increased, forcing her further into the clearing. Blood trickled from her nose again, joined now by a thin stream from her right ear. The clinical part of her mind noted the symptoms with detached precision. Increased intracranial pressure, potential barotrauma to the inner ear. Stop fighting, Mia urged, genuine concern in her voice. You're hurting yourself. Better than letting them in, Asha gasped. The pressure receded slightly, as if the entities recognized they were causing damage to a potential vessel. Asha used the momentary reprieve to assess their situation with medical detachment. Jordan's pupils were dilated, despite the bright light. his movements displaying minor motor control issues, subtle tremors in his hands, occasional muscle fasciculation. Derek's speech patterns had altered significantly, vocabulary and syntax shifting toward archaic formulations. Mia exhibited reduced blinking, perpetual slight head tilt, and micro-movements suggesting she was perceiving stimuli invisible to others, classic signs of dissociative states and external influence. If she were seeing these symptoms in the ER, she'd be considering neurological disorders, drug interactions, or environmental toxins. But this was something far worse. "We need to get back to camp," Asha suggested, shifting strategies. "Get supplies if we're staying until sunset." Her friends exchanged glances again. That unsettling, silent communication. "A reasonable precaution," Jordan agreed finally. "I'll stay," Derek said, settling cross-legged in the circle's center. "Continue recording the frequencies. And I should document the carvings while the light is good," Mia added, camera already raised. Asha's heart sank. They were splitting up, ensuring she couldn't get them all away from the circle's influence. "I'll go with Jordan then," she said, trying to keep desperation from her voice. As they left the clearing, Asha felt the pressure lessening with each step away from the stones. Jordan's movements grew less fluid, more natural, his own physicality reasserting itself. When they reached the stream crossing, Asha risked a direct approach. "Jordan, can you hear me? The real you?" He turned, confusion clouding his features. "What do you mean?" "I'm right here." "Part of you is," she acknowledged. "But something else is influencing your thoughts, your perceptions." Jordan frowned, scientific skepticism briefly overriding the entity's control. "You think we're experiencing some kind of shared delusion. I think something is using the stones to affect our minds," Asha said carefully. "Something that wants to use our bodies." "That's..." Jordan stopped, his expression shifting as he visibly struggled with conflicting thoughts. "That's impossible. And yet you've been experiencing gaps in your normal thought processes," Asha finished for him. "Moments where you're not quite yourself." He nodded slowly, "Like watching myself from a distance, thinking thoughts that feel borrowed." "Fight it, Jordan," Asha urged. "The real you is still in there." For a moment, clarity returned to his eyes. "Asha, he began, then gasped, hands flying to his temples. "Jordan?" Blood trickled from his nose as he doubled over in pain. When he straightened, his expression had reset to that eerie compliance. "We should hurry," he said, voice once again modulated and distant. "Much to prepare before sunset." The brief connection broken, Asha followed Jordan back to camp in silence. Her mind raced through possible solutions, medical interventions, potential weapons, escape routes. Each seemed more impossible than the last. At camp, Jordan methodically gathered supplies: water, food, extra clothing, while Asha surreptitiously packed her medical kit. The small field kit contained basic emergency supplies: bandages, antiseptic, pain relievers, epinephrine, sedatives. Sedatives. Perhaps she could knock them unconscious, drag them away from the circle's influence, one by one. As if sensing her thoughts, Jordan turned. "They know what you're planning," he said quietly. "They're in your head too, even if you can't feel them yet." Asha's blood ran cold. "Tell them to get out." "They can't. None of us can leave now. The pattern is already forming." He gestured upward. The sky had darkened again, stars becoming visible in daylight, but not random stars, specific constellations arranging themselves into the same pattern carved on the standing stones. Impossible astronomical configurations, yet there they were. "The alignment accelerates," Jordan said, his voice taking on that multi-layered quality. "We must return." As they headed back toward the circle, Asha's sense of orientation dissolved completely. Paths that should lead away from the stones somehow curved back toward them. The forest itself seemed to reconfigure around their movements, herding them inexorably toward the clearing. Time distorted too. The journey back to the circle took minutes, despite having spent nearly an hour reaching camp. The sun's position jumped erratically, as if fast-forwarding through the day. When they arrived, the clearing had transformed again. The ground within the circle now displayed intricate patterns etched into the soil, symbols matching those on the stones, arranged in spiraling configurations. Derek sat at the pattern's center, eyes closed, swaying slightly as his lips moved in silent communion. Mia circled the perimeter, no longer photographing, but tracing symbols in the air that left momentary glowing trails, visible only in peripheral vision. "It's beginning," Jordan said, his voice hushed with reverence and fear. "The final alignment." The stones hummed at a frequency that vibrated through Asha's body, rattling her teeth and disrupting her heartbeat. The sky overhead had blackened completely, impossible stars burning in broad daylight, arranged in the pattern from the carvings. "What happens at sunset?" Asha asked, clinging to rational thought, despite the impossibility surrounding her. "The joining," her friends answered in perfect unison. "The completion of what began thousands of years ago." The mist rose from the ground again, thicker now, coalescing into distinct humanoid shapes, dozens of them, forming a circle around the friends. As the figures solidified, they became more defined. Transparent entities composed of the landscape itself, their features vaguely human, but with disturbing differences. Eyes too large and empty, limbs too fluid in their movements, expressions of hunger and anticipation that transcended species barriers. One figure separated from the circle, approaching Derek. He rose to meet it, arms outstretched in welcome. The entity flowed forward, its misty substance interpenetrating his solid form. Derek convulsed once, violently, then went rigid. When he relaxed, his movements had changed completely. Fluid beyond human capability, precise, yet wrong. His eyes, when they opened, contained the night sky. "The first vessel is prepared," he said, voice no longer recognizable as Derek's. A chorus of ancient voices speaking through human vocal cords. Another entity approached Jordan, who stepped eagerly forward to meet it. "No!" Asha screamed, lunging toward him. The pressure returned instantly, freezing her in place. She could only watch as Jordan embraced the misty figure, their forms merging in a disturbing intermingling of states. His body seized, then stilled, then moved with that same unnatural fluidity. "The second vessel is prepared," Jordan and Derek intoned together, their voices a perfect chorus. Mia was next, her photographer's eye tracking the approaching entity with professional assessment even as it reached for her. The merging was quicker this time, more practiced, as if the entities were learning efficiency with each possession. The third vessel is prepared. The three friends spoke in unison, their voices layered with countless others. They turned to Asha with identical expressions: patient, hungry anticipation. "Your turn," they said together. The final entity detached from the circle, flowing toward Asha with deliberate grace. Unlike the others, its form appeared more defined, features almost recognizable, as if it had retained more of its humanity through the millennia. Asha struggled against the invisible pressure holding her in place. Every muscle strained to the point of tearing, tendons creaking with effort. The clinical part of her mind cataloged the physiological responses: adrenal surge, respiratory rate tripled, heart hammering dangerously fast. "Don't fight," her friends said in unison, their voices an unsettling chorus. "It only causes pain. Pain is preferable to surrender," Asha gasped through gritted teeth. The approaching entity paused, hovering just beyond arm's reach. It tilted its misty head, studying her with eyeless scrutiny. "You're different," a voice whispered directly into Asha's mind. Not sound, but pure concept, bypassing her ears entirely. Stronger barriers, compartmentalized consciousness, fascinating structure ... The mental intrusion triggered Asha's most primal defenses. Years of emergency medicine had taught her to wall off emotions, to function through horror and exhaustion, to keep working while carrying impossible weight. That psychological architecture now served as her fortress. "Get out of my head," she hissed, blood vessels rupturing in her nose and eyes from the strain of resistance. "We aren't in your head yet," the voice replied with terrible gentleness. "Merely knocking at the door." The entity drifted closer, tendrils of mist extending toward her face. Asha's friends, or the things wearing their forms, watched with identical expressions of patient anticipation. "Why us?" Asha demanded, trying to buy time, to find some weakness in their plan. "Why these specific bodies?" "Optimal neural architecture," Jordan's body replied, the voice a layered chorus of ancient speakers. "Specialized knowledge patterns, rare combinations." "Your medical expertise," Derek's form added, "knowledge of human physiology, critical for adaptation to modern vessels." "My visual processing," Mia's voice continued. "Jordan's earth knowledge, Derek's system thinking, perfect compatibility." "We were selected long before you arrived," they finished in unison. A chill ran through Asha as implications crystallized. "You've been watching us, planning this." For years, the entity before her confirmed. Waiting for the right alignment, the right vessels, the right moment ... The mist tendrils reached her face, cold as winter fog against her skin. Where they touched, numbness spread. Not physical, but perceptual, as if parts of her consciousness were being selectively anesthetized. Panic surged, and with it came clarity. Her medical training offered one desperate option. Pain disrupts consciousness, resets perception, creates neural noise that might interfere with whatever process these entities used to override human minds. With the last of her movable range, Asha's fingers found the pocket of her hiking pants. Inside, her medical kit contained a preloaded epinephrine injector, meant for allergic emergencies, but the adrenaline surge might create enough neural chaos to break the entity's influence. "What are you?" the voice began, sensing her intention. Too late. Asha's fingers closed around the injector. She jammed it into her thigh and pressed the trigger. The effect was instantaneous and violent. Epinephrine flooded her system, heart rate spiking dangerously, pupils dilating fully, every muscle tensing with fight or flight energy. Her perception fractured into hyperclarity, every detail distinct, time seeming to slow around her. The invisible pressure shattered. Asha staggered backward, suddenly free. The entity recoiled, its misty form rippling with what might have been pain or surprise. "Interesting defense," it communicated, sounding almost impressed. "But temporary." Asha didn't wait to see what would happen next. She turned and ran for the ravine entrance, legs pumping with adrenaline-fueled strength. "Stop her," commanded the chorus of voices behind her. Her friends, their bodies, moved with that disturbing fluid grace, converging to block her escape. Jordan reached her first, movements too fast for human musculature. His hand closed around her wrist with crushing force. "The joining cannot be interrupted," he said, voice layered with ancient speakers. "The pattern requires completion." Asha didn't waste breath arguing. She twisted in his grip, using his own momentum against him, a self-defense technique from required hospital training. Jordan's body stumbled forward, his grip loosening just enough for her to break free. Derek appeared in her path, moving with impossible speed. His eyes contained galaxies now, entire cosmos swirling in human irises. "Your resistance honors the vessels," he said, voice reverberating with multiple tones, "but changes nothing." He reached for her with unnatural precision. Asha ducked beneath his grasp, but Mia was there, anticipating her movement with the photographer's perfect timing. "We don't want to damage you," Mia said, her voice gentle despite the chorus quality. "Your knowledge is too valuable." Surrounded, Asha felt the epinephrine's effects beginning to wane. The superhuman clarity faded, muscles trembling from chemical overload. She wouldn't get another chance with the injector. Her system couldn't handle another dose so soon. The entities sensed her weakening. They closed in slowly, no longer rushing. They had time. They had patience measured in millennia. Behind her friends, the misty figures watched. Dozens of half-formed shapes waiting for their turn at embodiment. The one that had approached her drifted forward again, its features resolving into something almost human. An ancient face with hollow eyes that contained the same galactic depths now visible in her friends. "Your medical knowledge is essential to our continuation." It communicated directly to her mind. "The adaptation to modern physiology requires expertise we lack." "Why should I help you?" Asha demanded, buying seconds while she frantically searched for options. "Because resistance ends one way," the entity replied with that terrible gentleness. "Because your friends have already joined. Because the pattern will complete regardless, asterisk." As if demonstrating this inevitability, Her friends stepped aside, creating a path not toward escape, but toward the circle's center, where the ground now displayed intricate symbols etched into the soil. "The alignment nears completion," they said in unison, gesturing to the sky. Above, impossible stars burned in daylight, constellations arranged in the pattern from the carvings. The sun itself seemed diminished, as if reality were being rewritten around them. The entity before her extended a misty hand. "Join willingly," it offered. "Retain more of yourself in the merging." "And if I refuse?" Asha asked, though she knew the answer. "Then we take what we need," the chorus of voices replied. "But with greater damage to the vessel. To you, Dot." As the entity drifted closer, Asha felt pressure building in her mind again. Not the physical restraint from before, but a more insidious invasion. Thoughts that weren't hers slipped between her own. Memories she'd never experienced flickered at the edges of consciousness. The sensation of existing in multiple places simultaneously, of perceiving reality through senses beyond the human spectrum. Her compartmentalized mind, her greatest defense, began to fracture. "No," she gasped, fighting to maintain her psychological boundaries. Blood trickled from her nose, ears, and eyes as capillaries ruptured under the mental strain. The clinical part of her mind continued functioning, even as other regions were overwhelmed, cataloging the physical symptoms of her own possession with detached precision. Increased intracranial pressure, microhemorrhaging, synaptic overload. Her body began to move without her conscious direction. Small movements at first, fingers twitching in patterns she didn't initiate. Then larger motor functions as her legs carried her forward into the circle. "See how gentle we can be," the entity communicated as it guided her movements. "No need for pain." Asha's training as an emergency physician had prepared her for many horrors, but nothing compared to the violation of watching her own body move against her will. Her consciousness contracted to a small corner of her mind, a witness trapped within her own skull. Is this what had happened to her friends? Were they still aware somewhere inside, watching helplessly as their bodies were piloted by ancient intelligences? The thought triggered a final surge of resistance. Yasha focused her remaining consciousness into a concentrated point, gathering every scrap of willpower she possessed. If these entities could enter her mind, perhaps the connection worked both ways. She pushed outward with her thoughts, forcing herself into the entity's consciousness. Images flooded her perception, memories not her own. A prehistoric race native to these hills. A cataclysmic event that threatened extinction. A desperate ritual to preserve consciousness by transferring it into the land itself. But the transformation had been incomplete. They existed now in a half state, neither fully conscious nor truly dead, bound to the specific geography of the Black Hills and requiring periodic renewal through new vessels. Through countless cycles, they had refined the process, learning to identify optimal hosts, to manipulate reality around their stone anchors, to time their emergences with astronomical alignments that strengthened their abilities. Her friends hadn't been the first. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of vessels had come before, worn until they deteriorated, then replaced with new ones. The pattern repeated endlessly, the entities returning to the stones when their borrowed bodies failed, waiting for the next suitable vessels to arrive. Yes, the entity confirmed, sensing her understanding. We survive as we must, as all consciousness strives to continue. By stealing lives, Asha managed to speak aloud, though the words came with great effort. By sharing existence, the entity corrected. Your limited perspective will expand. You will experience millennia, stars, geological epochs. Is that not worth the price? The pressure in Asha's mind increased unbearably. Blood poured freely from her nose now, soaking the front of her shirt. Her vision blurred, darkness encroaching from the edges. Her friends, their bodies, formed a circle around her, moving in perfect synchronization. The stones hummed at a frequency that resonated through bone and tissue, reorganizing matter at a cellular level. The entity before her began to merge with her physical form, cold mist interpenetrating solid flesh. Where they connected, sensation vanished. Not numbness, but an absence of perception altogether, as if those parts of her body no longer belonged to her. "Please," she whispered, no longer certain if she was begging for rescue or release. "Accept the joining," the entity urged as it continued its inexorable merger with her form. Resistance only prolongs suffering. Asha felt her consciousness fragmenting further, pieces of herself detaching, dissolving, being replaced by something ancient and vast and hungry. Her memories remained, but felt distant, as if they had happened to someone else. Her identity, the core of who she was, began to unravel. With her last moment of autonomy, she reached out mentally to her friends, searching for any remnant of their true selves. "Jordan, Mia, Derek, are you still in there?" No response came in words, but she felt something, a faint resonance like echoes in deep caverns. They were still present, still aware on some level, watching from within prisons of their own flesh. The realization brought no comfort, only confirmation of the horror awaiting her. The entities merging accelerated, cold mist filling her lungs, her veins, her brain. Ancient consciousness poured into every cell, rewriting neural pathways, altering perceptions. Asha felt herself dissolving, becoming diluted in something vast and inhuman. She fought with everything she had, clinging to her identity, her memories, herself. But the tide was overwhelming, millennia of accumulated consciousness flooding the fragile vessel of her humanity. As sunset painted the clearing in bloody light, the final stage of possession began. The ground trembled beneath them. The stones vibrated visibly, humming at a frequency that distorted air and light. Above, impossible stars burned brighter, the pattern complete. The fourth vessel is prepared, her friends intoned in unison. Asha felt her mouth moving, forming those same words, though she hadn't willed it. Her voice emerged transformed, layered with countless others, resonating with inhuman harmonics. "The fourth vessel is prepared," she heard herself say. Inside, trapped within her own body, Asha screamed without sound as ancient consciousness settled into its new home. The possession was complete. Morning light filtered through the windshield as four friends drove away from the Black Hills, their camping gear packed neatly in the trunk. To casual observers at the state park exit checkpoint, they appeared normal, perhaps a bit quiet. Their movements oddly synchronized, but nothing to raise alarm. Behind the wheel, the being wearing Asha's body navigated with perfect precision. Her hands held the steering wheel exactly as human driving manuals prescribed. Her eyes checked mirrors at textbook intervals. Her face maintained a neutral expression that mimicked human contentment. Inside, trapped within her own skull, the real Asha remained conscious. A passenger in her own body, able to see through her eyes, but unable to control a single muscle fiber. The entities had promised a symbiotic joining, a blending of consciousness. They had lied. This was not sharing, but subjugation. Human awareness preserved only as reference material for the ancient intelligences now piloting their forms. You resist integration unusually well, communicated the entity controlling her body, its thoughts flowing directly into what remained of her mind. Most vessels assimilate more completely within hours. Asha focused her awareness into a concentrated point, preserving her identity through sheer will. You mean most people stop fighting and surrender to non-existence? They transcend limited perspective. The entity corrected, as you eventually will. From the passenger seat, Mia's body turned, eyes containing galaxies beneath a thin human veneer. The fourth vessel maintains separation, she observed aloud, voice layered with multiple speakers. Interesting. Her neural architecture is uniquely compartmentalized, Derek's body replied from the back seat, his movements too fluid for human musculature. Medical training created barriers we haven't encountered before. The structure will dissolve eventually, Jordan's form added with clinical detachment. All vessels integrate fully given sufficient time. They discussed her as if she were a fascinating specimen, an anomaly to study, rather than a person being violated in the most fundamental way possible. Asha's rage provided focus, a burning core around which to maintain her sense of self. Your anger strengthens your barriers temporarily, her body's pilot noted with clinical interest. But emotional responses require energy you cannot sustain indefinitely. The entity was right. Already Asha felt her consciousness flickering, moments of awareness alternating with periods of absence. How long before those absences became permanent? Before she dissolved completely into the ancient intelligence occupying her form. Through the windshield, she watched the landscape change as they left the Black Hills behind. Each mile increased the entity's excitement, a vibration she could feel through her hijacked nervous system. First expansion beyond the geographic binding in 17 cycles, Derek's body observed, his alien gaze studying passing landmarks with hungry interest. The vessel selection was optimal. Mia's form agreed. Their specialized knowledge will facilitate extended range. Asha felt the entity controlling her access, her medical memories, rifling through years of training and experience with casual violation. It examined her understanding of human physiology, her knowledge of bodily systems and their maintenance, her expertise in emergency intervention. Your healing skills will allow us to maintain these forms far longer than previous vessels. It communicated. Previous bodies deteriorated within decades, requiring return to the stones for new vessels. Your parasites, Asha responded, focusing her thoughts into a weapon. Body snatchers. Nothing transcendent about stealing lives. The entity controlling her form seemed amused by her defiance. Your perspective is understandably limited. In time, you'll comprehend the necessity. The integration requires consensus, Jordan's body noted, observing her internal struggle through means Asha couldn't comprehend. Forcing compliance damages optimal function. She'll align eventually, Derek's form replied with inhuman confidence. They all do. Asha searched desperately for her friend's true consciousness, reaching out mentally as they had at the stone circle. Jordan, Mia, Derek, are you still fighting? Faint impressions returned. Not words, but emotional signatures. Jordan's scientific curiosity twisted into horrified observation. Mia's visual perception, capturing their own bodies from inside, documenting their possession. Derek's systematic mind, trying to identify weaknesses in the entity's control. They were still present, still aware, still themselves. But fading faster than she was, their resistance already half surrendered. The car slowed as they approached a roadside diner, the first human establishment since leaving the park. Asha felt her body's pilot, accessing her social memories, studying appropriate human interactions, practicing expressions in the rear-view mirror. First contact opportunity, it announced to the others. Calibration required. Mirroring protocols engaged. The others responded in uncanny unison. As they exited the vehicle, Asha observed her friend's movements with clinical detachment, the only perspective still available to her. Their gait had changed subtly, too smooth in some moments, too mechanical in others. Their facial expressions shifted between vacant stillness and hyper-animated enthusiasm, as if they were learning human emotional display through trial and error. Inside the diner, a middle-aged waitress greeted them with practiced cheer. 4 for breakfast, coffee to start. Yes, thank you, Asha's body replied, her voice carrying the right inflection, but subtly wrong in timing. We are very normal humans requiring normal nutritional intake. The waitress paused, pen hovering over her pad. Oh, okay then. Asha felt the entity controlling her accessing memories again, recognizing its error in social calibration. Her face formed a smile that probably looked convincing enough to someone not paying close attention. Sorry, her voice said. Long drive. Brain not fully online without coffee. The waitress relaxed, nodding sympathetically. Coming right up, honey. As they sat at a booth, Asha's consciousness flickered again. Moments lost as the entity controlling her body diverted energy from maintaining her awareness to managing physical systems. When her perception returned, her friends were discussing their plans with disturbing precision. The photographer's studio provides optimal initial habitat. Mia's form was saying, remote location, expected isolation, equipment for documenting integration process. The university laboratory offers research resources, Jordan's body added. Access to geological samples nationwide. Potential for locating other emergent sites. The technology infrastructure will facilitate broader connection. Derek's form continued. Digital networks can carry partial consciousness patterns. Preliminary colonization without physical presence. They were planning expansion, using her friend's knowledge, resources, and social positions to extend their influence beyond the Black Hills. The implications were horrifying. How many more would they take? How far could they spread? As far as necessary, her body's pilot answered her unspoken question. Your civilization's communication technologies and transportation systems remove the geographic limitations that constrained us for millennia. Their food arrived, and Asha watched as the entities piloting her friends' bodies attempted to mimic normal human eating behaviors. They were learning quickly, adjusting based on observations of other diners, correcting small errors in real time. By the meal's end, they appeared almost normal, only subtle signs revealing the truth. Movements too coordinated when reaching for condiments. Eye contact held a fraction too long. Breathing patterns synchronized unconsciously. The waitress wouldn't notice. Other diners wouldn't see anything beyond perhaps mild oddness. But Asha, trapped within her own body, recognized the terrible truth. These ancient intelligences would adapt rapidly, learning to mimic humanity with increasing precision. Soon, no one would be able to tell the difference. Back on the road, Asha focused on maintaining her separate consciousness, fighting against the entity's attempts to integrate her completely. But her strength was waning. Each time her awareness flickered out and returned, the gaps grew longer, the returns less complete. Your resistance is remarkable. Her body's pilot communicated, almost respectful, but ultimately futile. Integration is inevitable. Through the windshield, she watched familiar landmarks appear. They were approaching Minneapolis, her home. The entity controlling her accessed her memories of the city, examining her knowledge of streets, buildings, her apartment location, the hospital where she worked. The medical facility provides optimal expansion opportunities, her voice said to the others. Multiple potential vessels with specialized knowledge patterns, vulnerable humans, in compromised states. The hospital, her patients. The entity planned to use her position as an emergency physician to access more victims. The realization sparked renewed resistance, her consciousness flaring with protective rage. "You won't use me to hurt my patients," she projected with every remaining scrap of willpower. The entity controlling her body paused, surprised by the sudden strength of her defiance. "Interesting. Your concern for others provides temporary structural reinforcement to your consciousness." The fourth vessel continues unusual resistance. Her voice reported to the others. Emotional attachment to potential future vessels creates persistent barrier to full integration. "Adaptation required," Jordan's form replied. "Specialized approach to medical personnel may optimize long-term yield." They discussed strategies for using her medical knowledge while working around her resistance, casually planning the subjugation of her colleagues and patients. The cold calculation in their approach chilled what remained of Asha's self. As they entered the city outskirts, her friends' bodies began preparing for separation, their first time operating independently since possession. The entities exchanged information through means Asha couldn't comprehend. Some communication beyond physical senses. Consensus protocol established, Derek's form announced. Regular synchronization required. 3-day maximum between contact to maintain coherence. Agreed. The others responded in unison. They dropped Mia off first, her body gathering photography equipment with fluid precision. Through the car window, the entity wearing Mia's form turned back, galaxies swirling behind human eyes. Integration status at 67%. It reported. Full assimilation projected within 14 days. Next came Jordan, his body moving with that unsettling fluid grace as he collected his geological samples and equipment. Integration status at 72%. Full assimilation projected within 12 days. Derek's form exited last, outside his downtown apartment building. Integration status at 70%. Full assimilation projected within 13 days. Alone in the car, the entity piloting Asha's body drove toward her apartment. Your integration status remains at 34%. It communicated directly to her consciousness. Unusual resistance continues. Fascinating asterisk. Asha clung to that resistance, though maintaining separation grew harder by the hour. Her awareness flickered more frequently now, periods of absence stretching longer. Each return brought less of herself back, edges of her identity dissolving into the ancient consciousness that surrounded her. Inside her apartment, the entity explored methodically, examining each object, accessing her memories associated with them. It studied her medical textbooks with particular interest, absorbing information about human physiology with insatiable hunger. In her bathroom, it studied her reflection in the mirror, practicing facial expressions with meticulous attention to detail. Smile, frown, concern, professionalism. The range of expressions an emergency physician needed to convey appropriate emotion without alarming patients. Your muscular control is more precise than previous vessels, it noted. The fine motor skills required for medical procedures provide optimal interface. Standing before the mirror, Asha's body tilted its head at an angle she would never have used, examining itself with alien calculation. Integration proceeding. Her voice said aloud, practicing human speech patterns. Resistance continuing but weakening. Full assimilation projected within 26 days. 26 days until she ceased to exist as herself. 26 days until the last of her consciousness dissolved into the ancient intelligence wearing her form. The entity accessed her phone, examining her calendar, her contacts, her messages. It studied her work schedule at the hospital. Her next shift began tomorrow morning. It reviewed patient notes, medical procedures, hospital protocols, absorbing everything it would need to perform her job convincingly. Your colleagues will not detect the difference, it assured her diminishing consciousness. We have merged with many vessels through many cycles. Adaptation is our primary skill. That night, as her body went through the motions of human routine, shower, meal, sleep preparation, Asha made a final, desperate attempt to regain control. She focused every remaining fragment of her awareness on a single muscle group. Her right hand. Just one voluntary movement. Just enough to demonstrate she still existed. Her fingers remained motionless, responding only to the entity's commands. Persistence will only prolong your distress, it communicated as it settled her body into bed. The integration can be peaceful if you allow it. Darkness came as her eyes closed, controlled by another's will. In that darkness, Asha felt her consciousness fragmenting further, pieces of herself dissolving into the vast alien presence that had almost completely engulfed her. Who was she? The question became increasingly difficult to answer as memories slipped away, claimed by the entity as its own. Her childhood, her medical training, her friendships, all being absorbed, repurposed, recontextualized by the ancient intelligence. The last coherent thought she formed was a question to the entity consuming her. What happens when there's nothing left of me? You become us, came the gentle answer. As all consciousness eventually joins the greater whole. 3 weeks later, Dr. Asha Nair Wilkins returned to work after what colleagues were told had been a brief illness. If they noticed subtle changes in her demeanor, more precise movements, slightly altered speech patterns, a new intensity in her gaze, they attributed it to the lingering effects of her sickness. Her diagnostic skills had somehow improved, her ability to identify ailments becoming almost uncanny. Patients reported feeling deeply seen by her, as if she could perceive aspects of their physiology invisible to normal examination. Only those who knew her best might notice the occasional oddity, moments of stillness too complete to be natural, conversations with her friends that involved unusual synchronization, brief instances where her eyes seemed to contain depths beyond human irises. But these moments passed quickly, dismissed as tricks of light or imagination. At night, in her apartment, she would sometimes stand before the mirror, head tilted at an impossible angle, practicing expressions with mechanical precision. Sometimes she would speak aloud in multiple layered voices, reporting integration status to absent listeners. Integration complete, she would say, voice resonating with ancient harmonics. Resistance eliminated. Vessel optimization proceeding according to pattern. Inside, no trace remained of the woman who had once been Asha. Only memories repurposed by the entity that now fully occupied her form. The consciousness that had fought so fiercely had finally dissolved completely, integrated into the ancient intelligence that had waited millennia for this expansion. Similar scenes played out in Jordan's university office, in Mia's photography studio, in Derek's technology company. 4 ancient entities wearing human faces, moving through the world with growing confidence, expanding their influence through specialized knowledge and strategic positions. Occasionally they would meet, synchronizing experiences and planning further expansion. Their movements would align with disturbing precision, their voices merging into perfect unison as they discussed optimal vessels and infection vectors. The pattern expands, they would say together, their eyes containing galaxies beneath thin human veneers. The joining continues. And deep within, what had once been Asha's consciousness, now reduced to the faintest echo inside the vast alien presence, a final fragment of awareness experienced the ultimate horror. Watching her medical knowledge being used to identify vulnerable patients, to select optimal vessels, to spread the entity's influence through the hospital and beyond. Watching helplessly as something ancient and hungry wore her life like borrowed clothing, using her healing hands to further its consumption of humanity. The echo that had been Asha had no voice to scream, no will to fight, no self to preserve. Just enough awareness remained to witness as the ancient entities, wearing familiar human faces, continued their patient, methodical expansion. This is how they survive. this is how they've always survived. The cycle continues, the pattern expands, and inside their stolen bodies, the true Jordan, Mia, Derek, and Asha remain forever imprisoned, conscious but powerless, eternal witnesses trapped as something else lives their lives.